Hi there, my name is Simon. I am the Stupid Astronomer, and I am here with Kevin from Skywatcher. And this is actually going to be a first look at the new EQ8 Rh-Pro. So tell me a little bit about the idea behind this mount. What was the brainchild to create something like this?
So everybody remembers the original EQ8 high capacity mount. Now, obviously things have advanced between the era that mount was created to this mount. Now everybody wants through mount cabling and USBs and all kinds of stuff built in for remote imaging. We needed to look at the balance of the mount to refine that to make sure it would just balance easier and just give it an update with the technology that today's advanced imaging mounts really require.
So I'm noticing quite a big difference is you guys have a completely different dovetail plate by the looks of it, or a dovetail clamp. In fact, I can actually see the power outs and the USBs, and we've actually got an EQ8 hiding one of the original ones right here, which we're going to use as the comparison in just a moment. But go through some of the obvious changes, because this is the most obvious thing I've seen so far. It's like the first thing that was just gravitated towards. Tell me about this.
So the big thing about the EQ8R series is that they obviously have the cable management systems built in, which you see in a lot of the advanced mounts today. Up here we have 4 USB 3.0 hubs, 3 2.1 millimeter power ports, and then on the rear of the saddle there are 3 aux serial cable ports. And what this allows is all your cameras and imaging equipment, you don't have to have this big spaghetti monster sitting off of your mount anymore. Now you can easily put everything under the saddle, nice and clean, and have a nice set of cables coming out the rear, because there is a behind the mount there, behind the right ascension, is where all the cables come out. So you don't have anything hanging off that's going to get stuck or dragged or ripped off. It all conveniently plugs in here. So you reduce cable drag, which reduces guiding errors and simplifies your mount. And that's the biggest thing. And then, of course, we've got bigger knobs up here for gloves. If you see on the original EQ8, they're just not big enough. Another big issue that we found on the original EQ8 was the motor positioning. It sits too far out on the side of the mount, which makes the mount side heavy.
Right. Let's look at from this. I mean, we've got quite a hell of a scope up here. So the big thing here is weight capacity. So is this a big improvement from the original, or are we still dealing with the same high load weight capacity, or is it reduced?
It's the same 110 pound payload that the original played upon.
Right, so what that basically translates to you guys out there is if you do have a large imaging setup, and it almost makes no difference, you could put a 14-inch on here and put another 14-inch next to that one probably, because it can just straight up handle the weight. Of course, the type of dovetail clamp that you use is going to be a crucial thing. So let me understand something here. The Freedom Finder has been removed out of the system, is that correct?
Yes.
In favor of having the through mount cabling. And tell me a little bit about that, because that could be quite a big concern for a lot of people, is when you actually slewing the scope around, is it going to bind up? Is it going to just keep spinning round and round until all the cables twist up? Tell me a bit more about the theory behind all of that.
Yeah, so there's actually a physical hard stop in the mount that will stop it. That prevents you from damaging any cables inside. So you do get almost 360, but it's probably closer to about 300 just to prevent any cable damage, because when you do have the hubs in there, all that's being routed through the mount, so you have to take that into consideration. Right,
hence why the Freedom Finder encoder was also removed, which wasn't actually a big deal, to be totally honest, because depending on how you set up with your alignment procedure, if you had something like the Star Sense, for example, you can require the alignment through that. This has the homing sensor as well, so you can always just tell it to go back home and just resync from there. Theoretically, if you've polar aligned, your tracking and the guiding and everything else should always be dead on anyway. Yes, of course, then your pointing might be a little bit more inaccurate, but I'm sure you guys can work that part out. So we're going to now look down into the main body of this. I've noticed it just looks so much slick. It's like it's just streamlined. In fact, a lot has changed, because you mentioned just a moment ago a big chunk of it has come out, which we're going to show you a comparison in just a second. But go through some of this, because this is completely different.
Yeah, so on a passing glance, some might think, oh, it's the same mount. No, it's not. We've repositioned a lot of things to improve the mount. So if anybody have seen an EQ8 or similar, they'll notice the motors actually sit far out on the side. That actually affects balance of the mount. So what we did is we took those out and repositioned them underneath the gearing. Mm-hmm. And what that's given us two things. So a lot of people notice that the motors are now more recessed and centered, which aids in balance. But what that also does is allowed us to take the deck motor, which was not a belt drive, and bring it underneath to recess it further below the gear, but also giving us belt drive, so reducing the amount of gearing required.
So that means belt driven, this thing is quiet.
Yeah, if we were talking, you wouldn't hear it.
Oh, right. Wow. So that's a massive difference between the older version and even the CGE Pro that Celestron used to have, which is very similar to this type of mount. And I own one, and I'm sure you guys have seen it. And yes, it is noisy, but this thing is like pretty much silent.
Yeah, we like to call it whisper quiet. But yeah, they are extremely quiet.
Now, I'm glad you kept these handles, because that was one of the things that I was afraid of when I heard about this mount, that these handles were going to go. How much does the mount head weigh?
So the mount head weighs 55 pounds, and it's a solid 55, but the handles are positioned in a nice enough way to where you can easily set that right onto the tripod or pier, and it makes it a really convenient lift of that weight.
So has anything else changed from down here? Looks like the counterweight shaft, I mean, not much can be done on a counterweight. It's a pile of weight at the end of the day. So has anything else changed within that region?
We've repositioned a lot of the hubs. So on the original EQ8, which we'll see, you'll notice a lot of the power and stuff is right up front here. That's been positioned on the side.
Right.
And then we've also added our PC direct port. So there's a USB-B on the side here, which means if you're using like EQ mod or what have you, you can download the ASCOM driver and you can plug direct without a hand controller into the mount. And we're hoping to also have that set up soon for SkyX and maybe some other softwares where you can just plug direct, no hand controller needed.
Right, I think that is an important thing for everybody out there, is the fact that we can actually get away. In fact, Skywatch has been doing this for years. You could always get away from having no hand controller because of things like EQ mod and ASCOM. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up the original EQ8 and we're going to set it up side by side so you guys can have a good comparison to see what's changed, and we're going to start looking at the closer details. So give us 2 seconds. We're just going to spin this and then pull a cut from here somewhere. And
so the big differences between the EQ8 and the EQ8R series. First off is the saddle and the cables. You'll notice here it's just a standard D-plate saddle. Where over here we've got the same saddle there, but now you have all your hubs and everything you would need below here for all your imaging. Second, you'll notice the motor positionings. Here's our deck motor and right ascension. Those have now been removed from here and recessed, more center balanced here and down here. So it centers the weight of the mount and you're not side heavy anymore. A lot of our power and stuff have been moved to the side. We've also added a USB hub, which is on the side of the RH right here. And on the back of the mount, which we can't see at the moment, behind the right ascension is where we have our hubs. So everything from up here routes back to behind the RA. So you have nothing moving around. You just have one USB for all your stuff up here, one power port. So it's nice and clean and convenient. Now, another big thing on the R is, in comparison to its older brother, is these really, really small ratchet style locking levers, which can be a real pain to use in the wintertime. Where on the RH, we've got real big levers. You can lock it with one finger. They're much longer, so you get more leverage in there and easily lock that down. And then you also have bigger knobs for working gloves in cold environments. And a lot of that's really the big changes that we've done from the original EQ8 to the R series.
Let's talk about some of the other features, the tracking. I mean, do we have all the standard tracking features available?
Yeah, you've got lunar, solar, sidereal, you know, the basic.
Right, so, and then can you also do custom or programmable rates? I mean, what's the fastest this guy can go?
I believe it's about 3.7 degrees per second, so you're able to slew pretty quickly across the sky, even fully loaded.
Right, so, and that's a big deal. It's not quite satellite tracking capabilities, because this, remember, this is still only a 12-volt system. It'd have been great if you guys did the 24 volts and we'd get gone like crazy. But remember, they're trying to keep this so it's more consumer friendly than start going anything weird, because most of us have 12-volt batteries.
Yes.
So that's the other big. The power seems to be missing, or am I missing something?
So the power in comparison to the older mount has actually been recessed to the side of the mount with all the other ports that we have, and it's a thread-on aircraft connector, so it's real solid.
But it's also in line with all your other connectors. So if I have an EQ6, that means I can use the same connectors and the same
Yep, it's all the same. So the original EQ8 was a much larger plug. Now it's been streamlined down to our standard plug, so we don't have all different types of plugs.
So now, going on to the counterweights, same counterweight. Again, it means I can reuse any of my existing counterweight. The counterweight shaft hasn't changed.
That's correct. Yeah, these are our standard 22-pound counterweights. The bar is still the same. Actually, if you even need lighter weights, the Los Mondi 8 and 11 pounders will work on that bar.
Right, because it's still the same size. So remember that. They stuck with the standard, they stuck with everything, and everything is still the same. And the good thing here is, though, this part here is still the reinforced part. Remember, 110 pounds, it also means I can get 110 pounds down here in order to do the counterbalancing. Even though you don't need that much down here, it's just a testament to prove you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, we will be doing a very interesting test. You guys, I'm not going to tell you anything about it because we want it to be a surprise, but when you see it, you're going to see this mount scream. And it's going to make the Tesla truck versus the Ford F-150 argument look pointless, I'll tell you that much. So we're going to go into that at some point. Okay, so here's a big question. When it comes to, and people are going to ask you this probably to death, what are the numbers actually like? What is the actual math on this?
So we've successfully had it at about 0.6 total RMS for guiding, and that was using a 1,000 millimeter focal length with an off-axis guider.
So that's pretty serious stuff. I mean, most mounts average about 1.1. Some you can get down to 0.7, but which one was this? This was the RH?
This was the standard R.
This was the standard R. So that's actually quite a big thing then. So 0.6 we're talking, so we can only imagine the Rh-Pro is going to be doing something better, I'm assuming.
Yeah, your biggest issue with that's going to be your seeing conditions.
I'm going for the RH because, you know, I'm just being stupid here. I like to do cool stuff sometimes, but hey, I made a ton. I might as well spend a ton of money. But the regular version is nowhere near as much as this. And it comes with a tripod, more importantly.
Yeah. Both models you can get as head or a tripod kit, but it is several $1,000s cheaper to go with the R model, which we feel most people will be going with, because unless you really need that high accuracy encoder, the majority of people are going to be just fine in their backyards or their observatories with the standard R.
Right. I mean, what I'm going to be using this especially with is I'm going to be doing a lot of solar stuff, which some of you guys have already seen before in the past, but having an Esprit 150 up on there, this is where the RH really comes in, because we're talking serious focal lengths. And I think this is where this mount is really going to reign king when it comes down to these types of mounts. It is made for long focal length.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I'm going to actually be going home with this actual mount, and I will be doing a follow-up video where I'll actually strip the thing apart so you guys can actually see inside of this and how this thing works. So that's going to be an exciting video. So Kevin, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to write you a check, so let's go do that.
All right, let's go.